It was gone. My truck, my perfectly legal, fully registered, driveway parked truck, vanished overnight. At first, I figured it had been stolen, maybe by some thrill-seeking teenagers or a desperate thief looking to make a quick buck. But then I saw it, a neon orange notice plastered on my front door like a smug declaration of bureaucratic overreach. My gut twisted as I read the words that turned my morning into a nightmare. Vehicle removed for violating HOA regulations. And just like that, I knew who was behind it. Linda Grayson, the self-proclaimed ruler of the Homeowners Association. She roamed the neighborhood like a suburban overlord, armed with a clipboard and an ego that could fill a stadium. If there was one thing Linda loved more than her tacky lawn ornaments or her pointless newsletters, it was flexing her authority to ruin someone's day. Today, it seemed, I was her target. I stormed out of my house, barefoot and still in my pajama pants, determined to get answers. The neighborhood was just stirring awake, sprinklers humming, coffee mugs steaming, sleepy neighbors shuffling their trash bins to the curb. And there she was, standing on the sidewalk like a commander inspecting her army. Linda. She wore that smug little grin, the one that screamed she'd just done something she was ridiculously proud of. "Morning, Tom," she chirped, as if she hadn't just torched my day before it even began. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I thrust the notice in her face. "Where's my truck?" She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Oh, that old thing. It was towed this morning. You know how we feel about unsightly vehicles around here." I blinked. Unsightly? My truck wasn't some beat-up clunker with missing tires and a raccoon nest under the hood. It was a solid, well-kept workhorse, reliable, sturdy, and totally compliant with HOA rules. "That's not a rule," I said, clutching the paper tighter. "I've read the handbook." She let out a patronizing chuckle. "Oh, Tom, rules evolve. We can't have vehicles dragging down property values. It's just bad optics. I sent a memo about it last month." I knew the memo she meant. It was buried in a stack of HOA garbage, newsletters, trash bin reminders, warnings about flags being half an inch too wide, stuff only someone with too much time could care about. "So you're saying you towed my truck because you decided it's ugly?" I asked. Linda's smile grew sharper. "Not ugly, just not aesthetically cohesive with the neighborhood's vibe." I stared at her, grappling with the sheer lunacy of her logic. Meanwhile, a few neighbors had paused to watch. Mrs. Carter, who'd lived here forever, shook her head from her porch. Mr. Singh sipped his coffee, pretending not to care but clearly loving the drama. Even the mailman stopped mid-route, eyes darting between us like this was prime entertainment. I took a deep breath, forcing calm. "Linda, I need my truck. How do I get it back?" She shrugged, savoring her power trip. "Call the towing company and pay the impound fees. It's all in the handbook." My patience was fraying. "You towed my truck for no reason, and now I have to pay to fix your mess?" "Well," she said, her tone oozing fake pity, "if you'd followed the rules." "There is no rule against my truck." I snapped, my voice cutting through the air. "You made it up. Linda, it's scared. Let's agree to disagree." I wanted to yell. Instead, I forced a tight smile. "Fine, Linda. You win this one." I turned and marched back to my house, teeth grinding so hard I could feel it in my jaw. As I stepped inside, my phone buzzed, a text from a neighbor. "Mike, she's out of control, man. We've got to do something." I typed back fast. "Oh, I'm on it." Because what Linda didn't know, what she hadn't bothered to learn in her smug little crusade, was that I wasn't just any homeowner. I was the mayor of this town, and she'd just picked a fight with the wrong guy. I spent the next hour poring over the HOA handbook, marking every contradiction, every loophole, every rule Linda had ignored. It didn't take long to find gold. She wasn't just overstepping. She was breaking her own precious guidelines. For 4 years, Linda had run the HOA like her personal fiefdom, cherry-picking rules to suit her whims and dismissing the rest. Now, her reign was about to crash down. I made a few calls. First, the towing company. After some pointed legal talk they weren't expecting, they agreed to release my truck, no charge. Turns out they didn't like the idea of towing the mayor's vehicle on a flimsy excuse. Next, I rang a buddy at the county office. "I need an HOA audit," I said. A pause. "Let me guess, Grayson's Estates." I grinned. "You got it." Linda had spent years terrorizing this place, and no one could stop her. But she'd just handed me the perfect weapon. By the time I stepped outside again, the sun was up, and Linda was still patrolling, clipboard in hand, hunting her next victim. She didn't notice my smirk as I passed her. She had no clue what was coming, and that was the best part. She strutted around like a petty tyrant, oblivious to the fact that her days of unchecked power were numbered. I'd spent the last day gathering dirt, making calls, and setting a trap. For now, though, I played nice, acting like I'd swallowed my defeat, letting her think she'd won. I wanted her smug face to be unforgettable when the hammer dropped. The next morning, I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, watching Linda make her rounds. She clutched her clipboard, lips pursed, inspecting lawns and bins like a drill sergeant. She had a knack for turning nothing into a crisis: a stray basketball, a slightly tilted mailbox, a gnome that didn't fit her approved aesthetic. It was ridiculous, but people had put up with it for years. Until now. She caught me watching and flashed that fake smile. "Morning, Tom. Hope you've brushed up on the handbook. Wouldn't want another incident." I sipped my coffee, playing it cool. "Oh, don't worry, Linda. I've been reading it closely." She looked smug, thinking I'd caved. Perfect. As she moved on to nag someone about their flower pots, I went inside and grabbed my laptop. The dirt I'd dug up was better than I'd hoped. Linda wasn't just bending HOA rules, she was breaking them. Her perfect house? A violation jackpot. An unapproved, oversized deck, an unregistered garage renovation, even her fancy stone path that crept past her property line, all against the rules she'd shoved down our throats. That alone could sink her, but I had more. The HOA hadn't been audited in years, a lapse that screamed either laziness or cover-up. I didn't care which. I'd already called it in. By week's end, a compliance officer would be here, tearing through Linda's kingdom. First, I set the stage. I texted a few fed-up neighbors about a special HOA meeting, keeping it vague to spark curiosity. I knew Linda would pounce the second she heard, desperate to control it. That's what I wanted. When the meeting came, the turnout was massive, way bigger than the usual dull gatherings where Linda lectured about paint swatches while everyone zoned out. Tonight, the air crackled. People were done. They wanted change. Linda had no idea she was walking into a trap. She swept in, clipboard in hand, glasses perched on her nose, ready to dominate. "Let's get started," she declared, taking her spot at the table. "I assume this is about policy updates. I've got new rules on driveway cleanliness and approved exterior colors." I leaned back, smirking. "Actually, Linda, tonight's about something bigger." She faltered. "Oh, and who decided that?" I smiled. "The mayor." For a second, she froze. Then it hit her. Her face shifted from smug to confused to near panic. She scanned the room, waiting for a laugh, a denial. "Nothing." "You?" she stammered, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "You're the mayor?" "Yep," I said, savoring her paling cheeks. "And as mayor, I've been digging into some interesting stuff about how this HOA's run." The room buzzed. Linda tried to rally. "If this is about your truck, Tom, you're taking it too personally." I chuckled. "It's not just my truck. It's the fake fines, the rules you invent to settle scores, the unapproved junk on your property that breaks half the HOA code." That one landed hard. Her mouth flapped, silent. And I leaned forward. "The HOA's overdue for a full audit." Turns out, when you wield rules like weapons, people start checking the rulemaker. Whispers erupted. Linda's knuckles whitened around her clipboard. "You can't. This isn't how it works. The HOA's for the community." I cut in. "Not your personal playground. You've run it like a dictator for years. That stops now." A voice piped up from the back. "We should vote." Linda's head whipped around. "Vote on what?" Another neighbor stood. "On whether you stay president." "You can't," she sputtered. "I've worked so hard." "And we're grateful," someone else said. "But we're tired of the bullying." Hands shot up, one by one. It snowballed fast, years of pent-up frustration boiling over. Linda trembled. "You can't do this. I run this HOA." I stepped closer, voice low. "Not anymore." She stormed out, slamming the door. Didn't matter. The vote was unanimous. Linda was out. Her reign was dead. As I sat back down, I couldn't stop grinning. This was just the start. Her real reckoning was still coming, and I'd make sure she felt it all. Linda bolted from the meeting like a fury, heels clacking, the door banging shut behind her. A hush fell, then a wave of relief swept through. Neighbors traded looks, some whispered, some laughed. It was real. Linda was gone. I sat back, watching them process it. Mike, from 2 houses down, grinned. Never thought I'd see it. Figured she'd rule till we all keeled over. She nearly did. Mrs. Carter chuckled. But she just got her own medicine. Linda's ousting was long overdue, but it wasn't the end. I'd kicked off something bigger. Her petty fines were nothing compared to what was coming her way, real consequences. Outside, the night air felt lighter. Neighbors lingered, chatting excitedly. For once, the place felt like a neighborhood, not a jail. No more paranoid glances, no more fretting over trash bin alignment. People were free, but I knew Linda wouldn't slink off quietly. She'd fight back. Sure enough, next morning, my phone pinged, an email from the HOA board. Linda had filed a complaint, claiming I'd abused my mayoral power to oust her. The irony almost made me laugh. I didn't vote her out, the neighbors did. She saw it as a personal attack, though, and she'd make me pay. I trashed the email. She was flailing, and we both knew it. What she didn't know was the storm brewing. That afternoon, a white SUV rolled up to Linda's house. A suit stepped out, folder in hand, the HOA compliance officer. From my porch, I watched her answer the door, annoyed, probably thinking it was a mix-up. Then her face shifted as he explained. An anonymous tip about her unapproved mods, a full inspection, potential fines. Her voice spiked, shrill and defensive, but he stayed calm, handed her papers, and left. She stood there, pale and fuming. Mike strolled over, hands in his pockets. Wish I could hear that meltdown. Save it for what's next, I said. Linda wasn't just facing an HOA audit. A few days later, another car pulled up, a county inspector. Her deck? It jutted into a protected drainage zone. Her garage, Reno? Unpermitted. That stone path. It crossed public land. She wasn't looking at HOA slaps anymore. Thousands in fines, maybe demo orders. The best part? I didn't lift a finger. The system she adored had turned on her. Next time I saw her, she was a shell. No smugness, just desperate frustration. She stopped patrolling, kept her head down. It was weird, but I didn't feel sorry. She'd made everyone miserable for years. Now it was her turn. A week later, a for sale sign popped up on her lawn. Poetic. After all her fines and rules, her own violations drove her out. That night, the neighborhood had a little party, nothing fancy, just drinks, laughs, and relief. Mike toasted. To Linda, may she find a new place to terrorize. To Linda, everyone echoed, laughing. I stood on my porch, watching the sunset. My truck sat in the driveway, no fines, no threats, just peace. The next morning, watering my lawn, I saw a moving truck at Linda's. She stood outside, directing, her face blank. Our eyes met. No smugness, no fight, just quiet. She looked away first, climbed into her car, and drove off, gone from the place she'd ruled. Weeks later, a friend said she'd moved to a no HOA town nearby. I laughed. Even Linda, it seemed, had finally learned something.